I guess my first incident with alcohol was at age 13. Um, some friends and I stole some liquor from a party and got a little wasted um, and sick. Hence, I would never touch gin after that. When I was 14, I got drunk Christmas Eve. Uh, Working, I was working as a movie in the movie theater as an usher, and the folks backstage were cleaning up because there was going to be with their families Christmas, and invited the kid backstage to have some bourbon, and I had quite a bit. Got in trouble, got decked by some guy. My first blackout at 14. Um, I got a little smarter, but when I went to college, by the time I was in college, I was drinking pretty much every day. Um, Not getting wasted every day, but drinking pretty steadily. Um, and I drank, let's see, I started smoking when I was 12 or 13. Started drinking when I was 12 or 13. And from that point on, I drank pretty regularly. It wasn't, there weren't not a lot of consequences initially. Um, it was party time in college. I mean, everybody was doing it. I smoked a lot of weed. Uh, I had a good time. Um, and alcohol was, I don't know, I grew up in the 50s and alcohol was part of a social environment. Weed was not, but then by the time the 60s came around and I was in college, there was a lot of smoking as well. Got drafted and spent a year in Vietnam and came back in 71. At that point, I'd gotten a little strung out on opium when I was in Vietnam. I had a great war. Um, I had I came back in uh, otherwise in really good shape. No PTSD. It was a relatively uneventful, cover my butt kind of a situation. A lot of people didn't. There were millions of us that went, and most of us came back and um, went back to work and went back to school, and life went on. A lot of people I know um, that didn't work out that way. But I was very lucky. Came back. I used a little marijuana maintenance to get off the opium, and wine was my friend for quite a while. Smoking weed and drinking wine through the balance of college, and then through a fair amount of my early work years. Um, Married in '68. Um, my ex and I smoked weed together, drank wine together. She was not a heavy drinker or a heavy user. I was always the kind of person who drank more than anybody else. I didn't realize this. I thought I was drinking like everybody else was drinking, but I drank in, later on I would drink before the party, so you wouldn't know how much I'd been drinking, and then I'd drink after the party, so I could get myself to sleep. Um, it was, it seemed normal for most of my life, and and then it stopped being fun. Um, I came here in '76. Came to Ohio University. I'm a retired teacher, and the weed went away partly because it was illegal and alcohol is legal. Um, so as long as I could get a buzz, I was in reasonably good shape. Um, Drank pretty regularly, not, I didn't pass out every night back in those days, but I was isolating. I mean, at that point in my life, it was my job, beer, and then my family. Um, and I think, looking back on it, now that I have a program and thinking about my life with my ex, I think I just wasn't there for her. I didn't. I was not in a place where I was interested in her needs. I was mostly interested in beer and work. Um, it wasn't a lot. I wasn't passing out every day, but I was drinking steady and hard. We divorced. I continued working at OU. I the drinking increased a bit over the years. They talk about alcoholism as a progressive disease. Well, the more you drink, the more you drink. Um, and it's one of those things. There's a leads that I listened to once. A friend of mine, her father had done a lead on it, and I'd heard a recording of it. And he said, when you first tasted beer as a young man, it tasted like more. And it's kind of the way I've approached most anything. I guess I have an addictive personality. But the bottom line is, I was drinking pretty hard. And any day with a Y in it was a reason. The reality was it didn't have to be, I didn't have to be sad, I didn't have to be happy, it was just a pattern. And it got worse and worse. There was a period in there where after my son was born and after I was at OU for almost a couple of decades, I quit for 2 years, what we call white knuckle, dry drunk. Convinced I could do it myself. When I grew up, it was you handled your liquor, and I wasn't handling it. At the end of 2 years, I decided, oh hell, I can handle this, and so I started drinking again, and pretty heavily. At the end, I guess when I hit my bottom, I was really sick. I was in a seriously responsible position. I was trying to maintain my life as a high bottom drunk, trying to function, what we call a highly functional alcoholic. But the work was suffering, and my body was suffering, and it was getting to the point where you can't hide it anymore. Back in the day, when my son and his wife would come visit, there'd be a box of wine in the fridge, but I'd also have a box of wine and a bottle of scotch in my bedroom, so that when they'd have a couple of glasses of wine, I'd be through quite a bit of booze before the end of the evening. And I thought I was hiding it. I thought it was, I was not letting anybody know. But he knew, and I knew, and I think at the end, most of my colleagues at work knew that something was going on. So pretty sick and tired, to the point where I couldn't really eat breakfast. In fact, I couldn't have lunch until I'd had a couple of drinks. I couldn't keep it down. I couldn't actually pour myself a glass because my hands were shaking so bad. I was basically drinking in excess of a quart and a half of scotch a day, and it was tearing up my body. And something happened. People talk about a moment of clarity. I don't think it was so much a moment of clarity as that I was ready, I was tired, I couldn't do it, I knew I couldn't do it. I had quit or tried to quit a bazillion times, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it alone.